The massive space station called Nexus hung in the darkness between stars like a glowing jewel. Its metal walls stretched for miles in every direction, housing millions of beings from across the galaxy. Today was special because the most powerful alien races had come together for their yearly military showcase summit. Ships from dozens of worlds floated around the station, their lights twinkling like distant stars. Inside the main conference hall, thousands of seats filled with creatures of every shape and size imaginable. Some looked like giant insects with multiple arms and glowing eyes. Others appeared to be made of pure energy, shifting and flowing like living lightning. Many resembled sea creatures with tentacles and fins, while some looked like walking machines made of metal and wire. The air buzzed with dozens of different languages as translators worked to help everyone understand each other. At the front of the hall, 5 massive chairs sat on a raised platform. These seats belonged to the commanders of the galaxy's most feared military forces. Each chair was designed to fit its owner perfectly, showing just how different these species were from one another. Commander Jake Harrison sat quietly in a much smaller chair near the back of the hall. He wore the simple blue uniform of Earth Space Force, with silver bars on his collar showing his rank. Next to him sat Lieutenant Amy Foster, a young woman with short brown hair who kept checking her electronic tablet nervously. They were the Shin, only humans in the entire hall, representing Earth at its first military showcase. Summit. Jake had been chosen for this mission because he was good at staying calm under pressure. At 42 years old, he had served in Earth's military for 20 years and had seen action in several small conflicts around their solar system. His gray eyes missed nothing as he watched the alien commanders take their places on the platform. Amy was much younger at 26 and had never been this far from Earth before. She had been selected as Jake's aide because she was brilliant with languages and technology. Her job was to record everything that happened and help Jake understand any technical details he might miss. Right now, she was trying not to stare at all the strange creatures around them. The first alien to stand up was Admiral Zevix of the Vorthic Empire. His body looked like it had been carved from a single piece of diamond, with sharp angles and flat surfaces that caught the light and threw rainbows across the walls. When he moved, his crystal skin made soft, chiming sounds like wind through glass. His voice came from somewhere deep inside his chest and sounded like rocks grinding together. Welcome, inferior beings, to another year of watching true power, Admiral Zevix announced. His words were translated into hundreds of languages at once, filling the hall with a chorus of different sounds. The Vorthic Empire continues to rule the eastern spiral arm because our ships are unbreakable. Our hulls are made from the hardest diamonds in the universe, and our weapons can cut through anything. He waved one crystalline hand, and a hologram appeared above the platform, showing a massive ship that looked like a floating cathedral made of crystal. The ship was beautiful and terrible at the same time, with weapon ports that glowed like captured stars. Our flagship, the Crystal Dominion, has destroyed entire fleets without taking a single scratch. No force in the galaxy can break diamond that has been blessed by our stellar forges. The crowd made impressed noises, but Admiral Zevix was already sitting down. The next speaker was General Crix from the Montari Collective. She looked like a giant praying mantis, but her body was covered in metal plates that shifted color from green to gold as she moved. Her 4 arms ended in hands that had too many fingers, each one tipped with a razor-sharp claw. When she spoke, her voice sounded like a swarm of insects buzzing together. The Vorthic think one big ship makes them strong, General Crix said with what might have been laughter. But they are wrong. The Montari Collective rules through numbers. Why have one ship when you can have 10,000? Our fleets move like living storms across space, each vessel working perfectly with all the others. Her hologram showed not one, Ship, but hundreds of smaller vessels flying in perfect formation. They moved like a school of fish, turning and diving together as if they shared one mind. Our swarm motherships can birth new fighters even during battle. When one falls, two more take its place. We have conquered entire star systems before our enemies even knew we were there. Amy leaned over to whisper in Jake's ear. Their technology is incredible. Those ships are all controlled by a hive mind that connects every Montari in their fleet. Jake nodded, but kept his expression neutral. He had studied files on all these species during the long journey to Nexus Station, but seeing their representatives in person was different. Each one radiated confidence and barely controlled aggression. Fleet Commander Ulanos of the Delvian Republic rose next. His body looked like a cross between a dolphin and an octopus, with smooth blue-gray skin that was always wet. 8 tentacles extended from his lower body, each one moving independently as he gestured. Gills along his neck opened and closed rhythmically, and his large black eyes seemed to look right through anyone he stared at. Both crystal ships and swarm fleets have one weakness, Ulanos said, in a voice that sounded like waves crashing on a beach. They break when damaged, but Delvian vessels are alive. Our bioships grow from seeds and can heal any wound in minutes. Cut off an arm, and 2 will grow back. Destroy half the ship, and it will rebuild itself stronger than before. His hologram displayed what looked more like a giant whale than a spaceship. The vessel's skin rippled and flowed like water, and weapon ports opened and closed like breathing vents. As they watched, simulated damage appeared on the ship's hull, only to disappear moments later as new tissue grew to replace what had been. Lost, our ships feel no pain and know no fear, Ulanos continued. They fight until every last cell dies, and sometimes not even then. The ocean's fury once continued fighting for 3 days after its brain was destroyed, guided only by the ship's instinct to protect the pod. War Master Theron of the Nexari Confederation did not stand like the others. His species had no solid form, existing instead as patterns of energy that shifted between different colors and shapes. Right now he appeared as a roughly humanoid figure, made of purple and gold lightning, but his outline kept changing, as if he could not decide what form to take. Matter is weakness, Theron said, his voice crackling like electricity through speakers. Flesh rots, metal rusts, crystal shatters, but energy is eternal. Nexari warships exist in multiple dimensions at once. Your primitive weapons pass through. Use like wind through smoke, while our power can unmake the very atoms of our enemies. The hologram he projected showed a ship that seemed to flicker in and out of existence. Sometimes it appeared solid, other times it was just a glowing outline. Against the stars. Weapon beams fired from the ship seemed to ignore armor entirely, causing enemy vessels to simply dissolve into component particles. We have fought battles in the spaces between seconds, Theron boasted, while our enemies are still deciding. To fire, we have already won. The Phase Walker exists in 17 dimensions simultaneously and can strike from any one of them without warning. Finally, Supreme Marshal Quentic of the Syntoid Alliance stood up. He looked like someone had built a person out of black metal and glowing circuits. His body was perfectly proportioned, but clearly artificial, with joints that moved too smoothly, and eyes that glowed with inner light. When he spoke, his voice had no emotion at all, just cold mechanical precision. Organic beings are limited by biology, Quentic stated. They tire, they doubt, they make mistakes. Syntoid vessels are perfect, machines crewed by perfect minds. We do not build ships. We create them through pure logic and mathematical perfection. Each one is exactly suited for its intended purpose. His hologram revealed a ship that looked like a flying fortress made of dark metal. Every line was straight, every angle was perfect, and weapon turrets moved with mechanical precision. Iron Legion carries factories that can build new ships during battle. We begin each engagement outnumbered and ended having doubled our fleet size. Logic always defeats emotion, and machines always outlast flesh. The 5 alien commanders looked out over the crowd with obvious pride. They had ruled their respective regions of space for thousands of years, and their military might was legendary. No force had ever successfully challenged any of them in open battle. That was when Admiral Zephyx noticed the 2 humans sitting quietly in the back. His crystalline face turned toward Jake and Amy, and a sound like grinding glass came from his throat. The other commanders followed his gaze, and soon all 5 were staring at the Earth representatives. "What have we here?" Admiral Zephyx asked, his voice dripping with amusement. "I see the newest species has sent observers to learn from their betters. Tell us, little human, what mighty warships does your pathetic world possess?" The entire hall fell silent as thousands of eyes turned toward Jake. Amy felt her heart racing. But Jake simply stood up calmly and smiled politely at the alien commanders. "Thank you for the question, Admiral," Jake replied in a clear, steady voice. "Earth prefers to let actions speak louder than words. Perhaps someday you will have the opportunity to see for yourself." General Crix made that buzzing laugh sound again. The silence in the great hall stretched on like a heavy blanket. Jake's calm response had surprised everyone, especially the 5 alien commanders who expected him to either beg for mercy or try to impress them with wild claims about human technology. Instead, the human had simply smiled and said nothing about Earth's military capabilities. Admiral Zephyx's crystalline face began to glow brighter, which those who knew the Vorthik understood meant he was becoming angry. The light from his diamond skin cast sharp shadows across the platform as he leaned forward in his chair. His voice, when it came, sounded like boulders grinding together in an avalanche. "Did this primitive just dismiss us?" Admiral Zephyx asked his fellow commanders. "Did this creature from a world we only discovered 50 years ago just suggest that we might learn something from watching his people fight?" General Crix's metal plates shifted from gold to deep red, another sign of anger. Among her species, her 4 arms moved restlessly, claws clicking against each other in a rhythm that sounded almost like Morse code. The Montari Collective had conquered 47 star systems through coordinated swarm attacks, and no one had ever spoken to their representatives with such casual confidence. "Perhaps the human does not understand who he is speaking to, General," Crix said, her insect voice buzzing with irritation. "The Mantari have been waging war since before his species learned to make fire. Our tactics are studied in military academies across 3 galactic arms." Fleet Commander Eulanos rippled his tentacles in what his people considered a gesture of amusement, though it looked threatening to most other species. His large black eyes focused on Jake with the intensity of a predator sizing up prey. Delvian Republic had never lost a naval engagement in over 2,000 years of recorded history. "I think our new friend is either very brave or very stupid," Eulanos said, his voice carrying the sound of deep ocean currents. "Perhaps both. It has been so long since anyone challenged us that I had almost forgotten what it felt like to be surprised." War Master Theron's energy form shifted through several different colors, settling on a deep orange that pulsed like a warning beacon. Among the Nixari, orange meant anticipation of conflict. His species existed partially outside normal space and time, giving them advantages in warfare that purely physical beings could barely comprehend. "The human speaks of actions," Theron crackled, his voice like lightning seeking ground. "Very well. Let him show us these actions he values so highly. I suspect they will be most entertaining." Supreme Marshal Quentic's glowing eyes brightened as his artificial mind processed thousands of calculations per second. The Syntoid Alliance had been built on the principle that logic and mathematics could solve any problem, including military ones. His perfect mechanical brain could not understand how any species, especially one as young as humanity, could face the 5 greatest military powers in the galaxy with such composure. "Agreed," Quantock said in his emotionless mechanical voice. "We should provide this species with a practical education in military science. Perhaps witnessing true power will help them understand their proper place in the galactic order." Admiral Zephyx stood up slowly, his crystal body reflecting the lights of the hall in dazzling patterns. When he spoke, his voice carried clearly to every corner of the massive room, translated instantly into hundreds of languages by the station systems. "Human," Admiral Zephyx announced, "we formally challenge your species to demonstrate your military capabilities. Since you claim that actions speak louder than words, let us see what actions your people can take." A murmur ran through the crowd like wind through tall grass. Formal military challenges were rare at these summits, usually reserved for disputes between established powers. No one had ever challenged a species as new and apparently weak as humanity. Jake stood up again, and Amy noticed that his movements were still completely calm. She had worked with him for 3 years and had learned to read his moods. Right now, he seemed almost pleased, as if the alien commanders had just done exactly what he wanted them to do. "On behalf of Earth and humanity, I accept your challenge," Jake said clearly. "What did you have in mind?" General Crix made that buzzing sound that served as Montari laughter. "Oh, this will be delicious. We propose a demonstration of military might in the Kepler 442 system. It is uninhabited and has excellent facilities for weapons testing." Fleet Commander Eulanos nodded his agreement, tentacles swaying like underwater plants. "The system has rocky planets, asteroid fields, and abandoned space stations from previous tests. Perfect for showing off what our ships can really do. War Master Theron's energy form pulsed brighter. We will each bring our finest battleship, can demonstrate its capabilities. Target practice, combat maneuvers, whatever is needed to prove our superiority." Supreme Marshal Quintock's mechanical voice added the final details. "Each faction will show what their most advanced warship can accomplish. We will start with simple demonstrations and progress to more complex scenarios as needed." Admiral Zephyx's crystal face turned toward Jake with what might have been a smile, though it was hard to tell with it being made of living diamond. "Of course, we understand if Earth would prefer to withdraw from this challenge. No one would think less of your species for recognizing the vast gap between our civilizations." Jake's own smile never wavered. "Thank you for your concern, Admiral. But Earth accepts your challenge completely. We would be honored to demonstrate our capabilities alongside such distinguished military leaders." Amy felt her stomach drop. She knew that Earth's space fleet was tiny compared to these alien armadas. Humanity had only been building real warships for 30 years, ever since first contact with the Galactic Council. Their most advanced vessel was impressive by human standards, but it was nothing compared to the massive fleets these aliens commanded. "General," Crix clacked her claws together in anticipation. "Excellent. Shall we say 48 hours to assemble our forces? That should give everyone time to bring their finest ship to the testing ground." 48 hours is acceptable," Jake replied without hesitation. "Where exactly in the Kepler 442 system would you prefer to meet?" Fleet Commander Eulanos consulted what looked like a living computer made of coral and seaweed. "The 4th planet has several moons that will serve as excellent observation posts. We can set up the demonstration area in the asteroid belt between the 3rd and 4th planets." War Master Theron added, "My people will provide sensor networks to record everything for posterity. Future generations should see what happens when primitives challenge their betters." Supreme Marshal Quintock's eyes glowed brighter as he performed rapid calculations. The area has sufficient space for all 5 of our battleships to maneuver safely. Even accounting for the limited size of the human vessel, there will be room for everyone. The crowd was buzzing with excitement now. Word was already spreading through the station that humanity had accepted a military challenge from the 5 most powerful species in the galaxy. Beings who had never heard of Earth before today were suddenly very interested in seeing what would happen. Admiral, Zephix raised one crystalline hand for silence. Then it is settled. In 48 hours, we will gather at Kepler 442 to witness the first and likely last military demonstration by the human species. I suggest you all prepare your recording devices. This will be a moment worth remembering. As the alien commanders began to discuss logistics and arrangements, Jake sat back down next to Amy. She immediately leaned over to whisper urgently in his ear. "Sir, what are we doing?" Amy asked, trying to keep her voice calm. "Our most advanced ship is the UES Constitution, and it's barely a tenth the size of their smallest warship. How are we supposed to compete with beings who have been fighting wars for thousands of years?" Jake's gray eyes remained fixed on the 5 alien commanders as they planned the demonstration. His voice was so quiet that only Amy could hear him. But there was something in his tone that she had never heard before. It was not fear or worry, but anticipation, as if he was looking forward to what was coming. "Amy, prepare the quantum communicator for an encrypted transmission to Earth Command," Jake said softly. "Use the emergency priority channel and send." Exactly these words. Old Ironside's protocol is now active. Amy's eyes widened. She had heard rumors about something called the Old Ironside's protocol during her training, but no one would tell her what it actually meant. It was classified so far above her security level that even asking about it could end her career. "Sir, are you sure?" Amy whispered. "That's a code phrase I've never heard used before." Jake finally looked at her, and she saw something in his eyes that made her feel better and more worried at the same time. It was the look of someone who knew a secret that would change everything. "Trust me, Lieutenant," Jake said quietly, "and trust in human ingenuity. These aliens think they know what we're capable of, but they're about to learn something very important about our species." Amy nodded and began preparing the communication equipment, her fingers moving quickly over the controls. Around them, the alien commanders continued making their plans, confident that they would soon put humanity in its proper place at the bottom of the galactic hierarchy. None of them noticed Jake's small smile as he watched them celebrate their anticipated victory. The Kepler 442 system had never seen so much activity in its entire history. What had been empty space just 2 days ago now buzzed with hundreds of ships from across the galaxy. Observer vessels from dozens of species floated at safe distances, their sensors and cameras trained on the demonstration area between the 3rd and 4th planets. News of humanity's challenge had spread like wildfire through the galactic communication networks. Every major species wanted to witness what most believed would be the quick and decisive humiliation of the newest members of the Galactic Council. Betting pools had opened on stations throughout known space, with odds heavily favoring a human defeat within the first 10 minutes of demonstration. Amy Foster stood on the observation deck of the Nexus Station diplomatic vessel, watching the alien battleships take their positions through the reinforced windows. Even at this distance, the 5 warships were clearly visible as points of light against the star field, each one representing thousands of years of military development and countless victories in battle. Jake Harrison stood beside her, still, wearing that same calm expression he had maintained since accepting the challenge. He had spent the past 48 hours in constant communication with Earth, using encryption codes that Amy did not even know existed. Whatever messages he had sent and received were classified far beyond her security clearance, but she had noticed that his confidence seemed to grow stronger with each transmission. "Sir, they're beginning the demonstrations," Amy reported, checking her instruments. "All observer ships are in position and recording." Jake nodded but said nothing, his gray eyes focused on the distant battleships. Around them, the observation deck filled with alien diplomats and military attaches, all eager to see the show. The air hummed with excited conversation in dozens of languages as translators worked overtime to keep everyone informed. The first ship to move was Admiral Zefex's Crystal Dominion, and even from millions of kilometers away, it was breathtaking. To behold, the Vorthik battleship looked like a massive cathedral, carved from a single piece of diamond, its crystal surfaces catching and reflecting the light of the system star in brilliant rainbows. The ship was over 3 kilometers long and bristled with weapon ports that glowed like captured stars. Beginning Vorthik demonstration, Admiral Zefix's voice crackled over the communication channels. "Observe the power of true crystalline engineering." The Crystal Dominion moved toward a small moon that orbited the 4th planet, its movements graceful despite its enormous size. The ship's crystal hull began to glow brighter as internal energies built up and weapon ports along. Its length opened like glowing eyes. What happened next left the observers speechless. Beams of concentrated light erupted from the Crystal Dominion, each one focused to a point sharper than any blade ever forged. The beams struck the small moon and sliced through it like a hot knife. Through butter, carving the rocky sphere into perfectly geometric sections. Within minutes, what had been a solid celestial body was reduced to a collection of crystal-cut chunks floating in precise formation. Vorthik weapons do not simply destroy. Admiral Zefix announced proudly. They create art from destruction. Our crystalline focusing arrays can cut through any known material with mathematical precision. The crowd of observers made impressed sounds, but the demonstration was far from over. General Crix's swarm mother moved into position next, and the Montari vessel was unlike anything else in the system. The ship looked like a massive metallic hive, its surface covered in hexagonal patterns that pulsed with bioluminescent light. It was smaller than the Crystal Dominion, but somehow seemed more alive, as if it were breathing in the vacuum of space. The Montari Collective will now demonstrate the power of unity. General Crix buzzed over the communications. Watch and learn what 10,000 minds working as one can accomplish. The swarm mother's hull suddenly erupted with activity as thousands of small ports opened simultaneously. From each opening came a stream of smaller vessels, each one no bigger than a fighter. Craft but moving with perfect coordination. The swarm of ships spread out like a living cloud, their movements so perfectly synchronized that they seemed to be controlled by a single consciousness. The target for this demonstration was a large asteroid field that had been drifting through a system for millions of years. The swarm of Montari fighters descended on the asteroids like hungry insects, and what followed was a display of organized destruction that left the observers stunned. Each fighter knew exactly where to strike, and when, working together to strip mine the entire field in less than an hour. Individual strength is nothing compared to collective power, General Crix announced as her fighters returned to their mothership. The Montari do not fight as separate beings, but as a single organism with 10,000 hands. Amy checked her readings and found that the Montari had not only destroyed the asteroid field, but had also processed all the raw materials and constructed new fighter craft during the operation. The swarm mother now carried twice as many small vessels as it had at the start of the demonstration. Fleet. Commander Ulanos brought the Ocean's Fury forward for the third demonstration, and the Delvian vessel was perhaps the strangest of all the alien ships. It looked more like a giant sea creature than a spaceship, with flowing organic curves and a hull that seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat. Bioluminescent patterns flowed across its surface like living tattoos, and weapon ports opened and closed like breathing vents. The Delvian Republic will show you the power of life itself, Eulanos announced, his voice carrying the sound of ocean waves. Watch as our bioship demonstrates what it means to be truly alive. The Ocean's Fury approached a derelict space station that had been left over from previous weapons tests. The Delvian ship moved like a swimming whale, graceful and powerful. At the same time, when it reached the station, something unexpected happened. Instead of firing weapons, the Ocean's Fury simply rammed straight through the metal structure, its organic hull absorbing the impact without any apparent damage. But that was not the impressive part. As the observers watched in amazement, the space station's metal began to dissolve where the Delvian ship had touched it. The Ocean's Fury was literally digesting the artificial structure, breaking it down into component materials that were absorbed into the ship's living hull. Within an hour, the entire station had been consumed, and the Ocean's Fury appeared larger and healthier than before. Our ships do not merely destroy, Eulanos explained. They feed and grow stronger with each victory. Cut us, and we heal. Damage us, and we regenerate. The Ocean's Fury has been wounded 10,000 times in battle and has never failed to repair itself completely. To prove his point, Eulanos ordered his ship to demonstrate its regenerative abilities. The Ocean's Fury fired several of its own weapons at itself, creating massive holes in its hull that would have crippled any conventional vessel. But as the observers watched, new tissue began growing immediately to fill the wounds. Within minutes, the ship was completely whole again, with no sign that it had ever been damaged. War Master Theron's Phase Walker moved into position for the fourth demonstration, though moved was not really the right word. The Nexari battleship seemed to flicker in and out of existence, sometimes appearing solid and sometimes looking like nothing more than a ghost made of energy. Its hull was composed entirely of controlled plasma and electromagnetic fields, giving it the ability to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Physical matter is a limitation that the Nexari have long since overcome, Theron announced, his voice crackling with electrical energy. Watch as we demonstrate warfare beyond the constraints of normal space. The Phase Walker's target was a massive armored fortress that had been constructed specifically for weapons testing. The structure was built from the strongest materials known to galactic science and was designed to withstand the most powerful conventional weapons. But the Nexari ship did not use conventional weapons. Instead of firing projectiles or energy beams, the Phase Walker simply phased through the fortress's shields as if they did not exist. Once inside the defensive perimeter, the ship began firing weapons that seemed to unmake matter at the molecular level. The fortress's armor did not explode or melt. It simply ceased to exist, dissolving into component atoms that drifted away on solar winds. We do not fight in your dimension alone, Theron explained as his ship continued its impossible attack. The Phase Walker exists in 17 different layers of reality simultaneously. While our enemies struggle with the physics of normal space, we strike from directions they cannot even perceive. Finally, Supreme Marshal Quintek brought the Iron Legion forward for the last alien demonstration. The Syntoid battleship was a masterpiece of mechanical engineering, every line and angle calculated for maximum efficiency. Its dark metal hull showed no decorative elements, only functional components arranged in perfect mathematical harmony. The Syntoid Alliance will demonstrate the superiority of pure logic over biological weakness, Quintek announced in his emotionless mechanical voice. Observe what perfect machines can accomplish when freed from the limitations of organic thinking. The Iron Legion's demonstration was perhaps the most impressive of all. The single blip on the long-range sensors grew larger as it approached the demonstration area, and every observer in the system trained their instruments on the incoming vessel. After witnessing the incredible displays of alien military might, Everyone was curious to see what humanity would bring to compete with such advanced civilizations. Amy Foster felt her heart pounding as she watched the human ship drop out of faster-than-light, travel at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. She had been hoping that Earth Command would send their most advanced vessel, perhaps the UES Constitution with its experimental quantum shields, or maybe the UES Defiance with its new fusion torpedo systems. What emerged from the light speed barrier was neither of those ships. The vessel that slowly cruised into view defied every expectation that anyone in the system had held about human technology. Jake Harrison watched through the observation deck windows as gasps and confused murmurs spread through the crowd of alien observers. Even he had to admit that Liberty's Edge looked nothing like what anyone would expect from Earth's finest battleship. The ship appeared to be built from pieces of other vessels, as if someone had taken parts from dozens of different alien designs and somehow welded them together into a single craft. Sections of crystal hull that clearly came from Vorthic ships gleamed, alongside panels of the metallic biometal that the Montari used in their swarm fighters. Organic conduits that pulsed with bioluminescent light ran along the exterior, connecting to what looked like Nexari energy cores that flickered with contained plasma. Manufacturing bays identical to Syntoid. Construction units were visible through transparent sections of the hull. Admiral Zephyx was the first to break the stunned silence that had fallen over the communication channels. His crystalline voice carried clearly across space, filled with what sounded like genuine amusement rather than the anger he had shown earlier. What in the name of the Stellar Forge is that supposed to be? Admiral Zephyx asked, his words automatically translated into hundreds of languages. It looks like the humans built their warship from battlefield salvage and scrap metal. General Crix's buzzing laughter joined the Vorthic commander's amusement. I have seen garbage scows with more impressive designs. Did the humans seriously think they could impress us by gluing together pieces of our own technology? Fleet Commander Ulanos rippled his tentacles in what his species considered polite mockery. Perhaps they thought we would be flattered to see our own designs copied so poorly. The bioconduits are connected all wrong, and those energy cores are positioned where they will interfere with each other. War Master Theron's energy form pulsed with colors that indicated he was finding the situation highly entertaining. Look at how they have tried to combine our plasma systems with solid matter components. Any first-year engineering student would know that such a configuration is impossible to maintain. Supreme Marshal Quintic's mechanical brain processed the visual data of the human ship and reached conclusions that his logical programming found absurd. The mathematical relationships between those components are completely irrational. That vessel should have torn itself apart the moment its engines were activated. The laughter and mockery spread through the observer fleet as beings from dozens of species joined in ridiculing the human battleship. Some observers began placing new bets on how quickly the cobbled-together vessel would malfunction or explode when it tried to demonstrate its capabilities. Amy felt her cheeks burning with embarrassment as she listened to the aliens making fun of their ship. She turned to Jake, expecting to see him sharing her humiliation, but instead found him smiling more broadly than she had ever seen before. "Sir, they're laughing at us," Amy whispered urgently. "That ship looks like it was built in someone's garage using spare parts. How are we supposed to compete with their advanced technology using something that looks like a flying junkyard?" Jake's gray eyes sparkled with something that Amy was beginning to recognize as anticipation rather than nervousness. He keyed his communication unit to the command frequency and spoke in a calm, clear voice that carried to every observer in the system. "This is Commander Jake Harrison, representing Earth and humanity. We would like to thank our alien colleagues for their impressive demonstrations of military capability. We have learned much from watching your ships in action. The laughter from the alien commanders grew louder at Jake's polite words. Admiral Zefex's crystal body glowed brighter as he responded with barely controlled mirth. "Oh, we are certain you have learned much, little human. Perhaps you have learned that you should not challenge your betters without understanding the vast gulf that separates our civilizations." Jake's smile never wavered as he continued speaking. "We would now like to request permission to begin our own demonstration. I believe you will find it educational." General Crix made that buzzing sound that served as Montari laughter. "By all means, proceed. We are eager to see what your collection of spare parts can accomplish. Will you be firing chemical rockets at asteroids? Or do you have something even more primitive planned?" The human ship Liberty's Edge moved slowly toward the center of the demonstration area, its mismatched hull components catching the light from the system star in strange and uneven patterns. As it drew closer to the alien battleships, the observers could see even more details that made the vessel look like an impossible combination of incompatible technologies. Amy counted at least a dozen different types of alien technology visible on the ship's exterior, ranging from Vorthic crystal arrays to Delvian bioneural networks. None of it should have worked together, and yet somehow the ship was not only functional, but had traveled faster than light to reach the system. "Captain?" Lisa Martinez's voice came over the communication channel from Liberty's Edge. She was a veteran of Earth's small but growing space navy, known for her ability to think creatively under pressure. Her calm, professional tone contrasted sharply with the mocking laughter of the alien commanders. "This is Captain Martinez commanding Liberty's Edge. We are ready to begin demonstration. Request confirmation that all observer vessels are at safe distance and recording equipment is active." War Master Theron's energy form flickered with amusement. "Oh, we are recording everything, human captain. This will make excellent entertainment for generations to come. Please, show us what your primitive species considers military technology." Captain Martinez acknowledged the transmission and began moving her ship toward the demonstration targets. Liberty's Edge approached a collection of asteroids that had been assembled specifically for weapons testing, the same type of targets that the alien ships had used for their own displays. Supreme Marshal Quentek's mechanical voice carried a note of calculated politeness. "We should warn you, Captain, that those asteroids are composed of extremely dense materials. They were selected specifically to test the most powerful weapons in our respective arsenals." "Thank you for the warning, Marshal," Captain Martinez replied. "We appreciate your concern for our safety." The alien commanders exchanged what passed for glances among their various species, all of them clearly expecting the human ship to embarrass itself by failing to make even a dent in the test. Targets. The betting pools among the observer vessels were now taking wagers on whether Liberty's Edge would manage to damage even a single asteroid before suffering some kind of catastrophic system failure. Jake stood calmly on the observation deck, watching as his species prepared to reveal one of their most closely guarded secrets. Amy noticed that he had stopped watching the alien ships entirely and was now focused solely on Liberty's Edge as it maneuvered into position. "Sir, what exactly is the old Ironsides protocol?" Amy asked quietly, using the code phrase she had transmitted to Earth Command 2 days earlier. Jake turned to look at her, and for the first time since she had known him, his expression became completely serious. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight that made her understand she was about to learn something that would change how she saw humanity's place in the galaxy. "Lieutenant, you are about to witness something that only a handful of people in the entire human race know exists. The old Ironsides protocol is not just a military strategy. It is a fundamental philosophy about how humanity approaches the unknown." On the communication channels, Admiral Zefix was still making jokes about human incompetence when Captain Martinez's voice cut through the chatter with calm professionalism. Beginning demonstration now. All observers please maintain current. Distance and monitor for unexpected energy signatures. The mismatched components of Liberty's Edge began to glow with various types of energy as the ship's hybrid systems came online. Crystal arrays borrowed from Vorthek technology pulsed with contained light, while Nexarray plasma cores flickered between dimensions. Mantari biometals shifted and flowed like living tissue, while Delvian organic conduits carried power throughout. The vessel, Syntoid manufacturing units, hummed with mechanical precision as they prepared to demonstrate capabilities that none of their original creators had ever imagined. Amy realized that she was holding her breath as Liberty's Edge prepared to show the galaxy what humanity had learned from studying every alien species they had encountered. The laughter from the alien commanders died completely as Liberty's Edge began its demonstration. What happened next would be remembered throughout the galaxy for generations to come, not because of the destruction it caused, but because of how. It changed the way every species thought about warfare, technology, and cooperation. Captain Lisa Martinez's voice remained calm and professional as her ship's hybrid systems came fully online. The mismatched components that had looked so ridiculous moments before now began working together in ways that should have been impossible, according to every known law of physics and engineering. Initiating integrated weapons array, Captain Martinez announced. All systems are green and ready for demonstration. The first thing that happened defied everything the observers thought they knew about alien technology. The Vorthik crystal arrays along Liberty's Edge began to glow, but instead of firing the simple cutting beams that Admiral Zephyx had demonstrated, the crystals were channeling energy from the Nexarray plasma cores in patterns that made the light itself bend and twist through multiple dimensions. Amy Foster watched in amazement as beams of crystallized energy erupted from the human ship. But these were not ordinary weapons. The light passed through normal space, then flickered into the same dimensional layers that War Master Theron's Phase Walker used for attacks. The target asteroids did not simply get cut apart like Admiral Zephyx had done. They were sliced in multiple dimensions simultaneously, causing pieces of rock to disappear and reappear in completely different locations. Impossible, Admiral Zephyx whispered, his crystalline voice carrying clearly over the communication channels. Those focusing arrays are designed to work only in normal space. How are they channeling energy through dimensional barriers? Jake. Harrison smiled as he watched the alien commander's shock. This was exactly what he had been hoping for when Earth Command activated the old Ironsides protocol. Humanity's greatest weapon was not superior technology, but the ability to see possibilities that other species had never imagined. The demonstration continued as Liberty's Edge deployed what looked like Mantari swarm fighters, but these small craft were unlike anything General Crix had ever seen. Each fighter carried a Delvian bioregeneration pod that allowed damaged units to repair themselves instantly. More importantly, the swarm was not controlled by a single hive mind like traditional Mantari technology. Instead, each fighter was equipped with a Syntoid logic processor that could make independent decisions, while remaining perfectly coordinated with the rest of the group. The result was a swarm that combined the unified tactics of the Mantari with the individual intelligence of the Syntoids, creating a fighting force that was both collective and adaptable. This cannot be, General Crix buzzed, her voice filled with confusion rather than anger. Syntoid processors and Mantari hive minds are incompatible. The logical patterns interfere with collective consciousness. We have tried this integration for centuries and always failed. Supreme Marshal Quentek's glowing eyes brightened as his mechanical brain tried to process what he was seeing. The mathematical probability of successfully combining those systems approaches zero. How have the humans solved equations that our greatest minds have worked on for millennia? Captain Martinez's response was simple and direct. we approached the problem differently. Instead of trying to make your technologies work the way you designed them, we asked what would happen if we let them evolve beyond their original limitations. The human swarm descended on a collection of test targets, and what followed was unlike anything any observer had ever seen. The fighters moved with Montari coordination, but adapted their tactics in real time like individual synthoid units. When targets proved more difficult than expected, the swarm did not simply throw more numbers at the problem like traditional Montari forces would have done. Instead, individual fighters used their Delvian biopods to rapidly evolve new weapon configurations on the spot, while their synthoid processors calculated the most efficient attack patterns. Within minutes, what had started as a standard swarm assault had become a constantly adapting cloud of intelligent fighters that seemed to learn and improve with every target they engaged. But Liberty's Edge was not finished with its demonstration. The ship moved toward the largest and most heavily armored target in the test area, a massive fortress that had been specifically designed to withstand attacks from all 5 alien technologies. It was built from Vorthic crystal matrix, protected by Montari swarm shields, reinforced with Delvian bioarmor, defended by Nexari phase barriers, and controlled by synthoid defensive systems. Fleet Commander Ulanos rippled his tentacles nervously as he watched the human ship approach the fortress. That target was designed to be indestructible. It incorporates the best defensive technologies from all our civilizations. No single ship should be able to penetrate those defenses. War Master Theron's energy form flickered with uncertainty. The fortress exists in multiple dimensions, simultaneously, and can phase shift to avoid attacks. Even our most powerful weapons cannot touch it when it is properly defended. Captain Martinez's response was to do something that none of the alien commanders had expected. Instead of attacking the fortress, Liberty's Edge began broadcasting on the same frequencies that the fortress used for its defensive coordination. The human ship was not trying to break through the defenses. It was trying to communicate with them. What is she doing? Admiral Zephix asked, his crystal voice filled with confusion. Why is she transmitting data to the target instead of attacking it? Jake stepped forward to address the alien commanders directly, his calm voice carrying the weight of revelation. Captain Martinez is demonstrating humanity's most important discovery about your technologies. We learned that they were never meant to fight each other. They were meant to work together. What happened next would be talked about in military academies throughout the galaxy for thousands of years. The fortress, which had been designed to defend against attacks from any single alien technology, suddenly began responding to Liberty's Edge, as if the human ship were a friendly vessel. The Vorthic crystal matrix recognized the ship's focusing arrays as compatible technology. The Montari swarm shields saw the human fighters as part of their collective. The Delvian bioarmor detected the regeneration pods and identified Liberty's Edge as a living ally. The Nexari phase barriers allowed the ship to pass through because its plasma cores resonated with the correct dimensional frequencies. The synthoid defensive systems calculated that the human vessel posed no threat because its logic processors were operating within acceptable parameters. Impossible, Supreme Marshal Quintic said, his mechanical voice showing the first emotion any observer had ever heard from a synthoid. The fortress should be rejecting the human ship as an enemy target. Why are our own defenses treating it as an ally? Captain Martinez's voice carried a note of gentle explanation as she guided Liberty's Edge through defenses that should have been impenetrable. Because we taught your technologies to recognize each other as partners instead of competitors. Humans have discovered that the universe is not built for conflict. It is built for cooperation. Amy Foster felt tears running down her cheeks as she finally understood what Jake had been trying to tell her about humanity's place in the galaxy. The old Ironsides protocol was not about building better weapons or stronger ships. It was about taking the best ideas from every species they met and finding ways to make them work together in harmony. The demonstration reached its climax when Admiral Zephyx decided to test the human ship directly. The Crystal Dominion fired its most powerful cutting beam at Liberty's Edge, the same weapon that had sliced a moon into geometric pieces earlier in the day. But instead of trying to dodge or shield itself from the attack, Liberty's Edge did something unprecedented. The ship absorbed the incoming energy using modified Nexare collectors, channeled it through Delvian bioconduits that distributed the power safely throughout the vessel, and then redirected the energy through synctoid manufacturing units to instantly construct a dozen new support ships. "You used our own weapon to make yourself stronger," Admiral Zephyx said, his voice filled with something that might have been wonder. Captain Martinez nodded as her newly created support fleet took defensive positions around Liberty's Edge. "That is what humans do, Admiral. We do not see enemies, we see teachers. Every species we have met has shown us something new about what is possible in this universe." Jake's voice carried clearly across all communication channels as he addressed not just the 5 alien commanders, but every observer in the system. "You have each spent thousands of years perfecting one approach to warfare. You became so focused on being the best at your chosen methods that you forgot to ask whether there might be better ways to solve problems." General Crix's buzzing voice was quieter now, thoughtful rather than mocking. "What are you saying, human?" "I am saying that humanity's greatest strength is not our technology or our weapons," Jake replied. "Our greatest strength is our ability to learn from everyone we meet and find ways to make their ideas work together. You taught us that cooperation is more powerful than competition.